Hello, my name is Brian Gleason. I'm a developer on the IBM Cloud team, and in today's video I'm going to show some of the newest capabilities available for the delivery pipeline tool in IBM Cloud. So I've set up a simple tool chain here for a new project. A team is starting out work on a new IBM sales app, so they've created a basic GitHub repository and two pipelines. From the get-go, the team wants to adopt kind of best practices for code delivery and testing and so forth, and for creating their continuous delivery pipeline. So they've created two pipelines, one for production deployments and one for testing out pull requests when developers are making changes. So let's jump into the pull request pipeline. It has three stages, one for building the application, one for deploying it to Cloud Foundry, and then a final testing stage. And as you can see at the moment, the build PR stage here currently has no input at all. So what I'm going to do is change this to Git repository. I'm going to select the IBM Sales App repository and the master branch. And then I'm going to also select the run jobs automatically for Git events on the chosen branch. So previously the tool chain, or the pipeline I should say, supported when a commit is pushed to Git that it would run this stage and kick off a pipeline run. But now we've added additional capabilities to support running the pipeline when a pull request is opened or if it's updated, and also when a pull request is closed. So I'm going to change those settings to what you see on screen here. And before I hit save, I just want to point out that inside of my IBM Sales App repo, in the webhooks settings, there's currently no webhooks set up. But when I go back and hit save, this will automatically create the webhook for us. So if I refresh, you can see that the webhook is now created for pull requests and push events in Git. Okay, so now that our webhook is in place, let's go and make a pull request and see how things work in practice. So on this other tab, I'm logged in as myself as Brian Gleason, as though I'm a developer on the team, and I'm going to make a change to my application. So I'm going to go into the server.js, and what I'm going to do is actually sort of break the application. So this is a very simple Node Express application, but if you'll notice here, the health endpoint is designed to simply report a status of 200 to say that the application is running and healthy. And if I go back to this other tab, you can see that this health endpoint is already up and running at the moment, reporting healthy. But what I'm going to do is break that to make it report a 500 error. So let's edit this file, change it to 500, on healthy, and I'm going to commit this to a new branch. And then I'm going to create the pull request. So once I actually create the pull request, the webhook will inform the pipeline in the background that this pull request has been created, and that will automatically trigger a pipeline run of my three stages. In turn, the pipeline feeds back information to the GitHub pull request to inform it of the status of each of those stages. So you can see that the build stage has already completed successfully. It's now moved on and tells me that the deploy stage is pending, and I can switch back over to my admin view and see that that is reflected in the pipeline itself. Build has passed and now it's deploying. And if I go into the deploy stage, it's a fairly standard deployment configuration, which is just pushing my app to Cloud Foundry, and the application name in question is Sales App Test. So we can see that here, this is my Cloud Foundry application within IBM Cloud. And if I go to the URL, this is what the application currently looks like. It's a bare bones hello world application. As I said, the team is focused on creating their pipelines and their best practices for code delivery before they actually deliver their code. So still working off a hello world project. So if I go back to my pipeline, we can see that the deployment stage succeeded and passed, but now that I've introduced that glaring error in my application. The test phase has failed. And if we go into the logs and history, we can see it errored because there was a 500 internal server error. And if I go into the configuration of that test stage, you can see that it's trying to do a curl against the health endpoint of my application and checking that the status is 200. A very basic test, but it's checking the health endpoint and finding that the endpoint is returning 500, so it returns an error. Which you can see here. If I refresh my health endpoint, it is now reporting 500 unhealthy. And lastly, if I go back into my pull request, I can see that that check was unsuccessful against the test stage. So one thing I want to point out here is, even though I have a check that's failed, I'm able to still merge this pull request, but that's not really an ideal practice for this new team or this new project. So what we're going to do is go back to the admin view and into the branches area, and we're going to add a branch protection rule against the master branch. And we're going to require that all status checks have to pass before we are able to merge anything into the master branch. So now if I go back and refresh this page, you can see I'm now blocked from merging the pull request because one of the required stages or checks has failed. Okay, so our pipeline has caught a problem, so now we need to go back and fix it. So I'm going to go into my files changed and basically undo what I did to fix the issue. And I'm going to commit that to the same break server branch, which will update our pull request. So as I mentioned earlier, when you edit a pull request or update it like I just did, it will trigger again a run of the pipeline associated with this repo. So you can see that the build request has already kicked off again and is running away and passed, and now it's going through the deploy stage. So whilst that's running off, I want to point out in my pull request that we do provide links to the details of each of the stages or the checks that are being run against your pull request. So I can see the list of builds that have been run in the past and check the logs, make sure everything's okay there. And this applies across each of the different stages. So once the other two stages are finished, they will also provide details links. So I can see here now the deploy stage, which is still finishing up, deploying my app to Cloud Foundry. And again, consult the logs to find out what's going on. So it's nearly ready, just waiting for the application to start up. And whilst it's waiting for that, I just also want to point out that in the continuous delivery documentation, we've added some notes around this new feature. You can see here text around the additional options that appear in the UI and a screenshot to go with that, and then some additional explanation of how to use this feature within GitHub. And I should also point out that this feature is fully supported in GitLab as well, the IBM hosted GitLab Community Edition. Okay, so back in my pull request pipeline, we can see that everything is now passing. The test stage has gone from failure to pass. And if I refresh my health endpoint, we can see that that's healthy once more. So all good there. And if I go back to my pull request, we can see all the checks have passed. You can see the details there. And now I'm able to merge my pull request because everything's good. So let's hit merge. Great. So that's now been merged into the repository onto the master branch. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that in the past, ordinarily when you commit to the master branch or the chosen branch, it would automatically trigger your pipeline again, but that's not the case in this use case because in my build PR, I deselected the when a commit is pushed option. This pipeline is purely focused on pull requests. But as I mentioned at the start, we also have production deployment pipeline alongside the pull request pipeline. And this pipeline is configured to start up whenever the master branch gets a commit push to it. So in that way, we can separate our production deployments from our pull request testing and get a bit more flexibility and control over how our pipelines are set up and managed, giving us a better practice for CI/CD. So as you can see, the production deployment ran away and tested, and everything's good in our production environment. So that's a quick overview of this new support for GitHub pull request integration between GitHub and the delivery pipeline. And as I said before, this is also supported in GitLab. Thanks for watching.